Okay, guys, very exciting day here today. We have Mike Rocco with us, and he's here to talk to us about investing in real estate, primarily here in Ontario. What's exciting about Mike is he is the #1 producing individual agent in our office, which is made up of 380 agents. Now, that's also very important to note that primarily 95% of your transactions are all coming from investment properties?
Yeah, 2022 might have been 100% or very close to it of all investment transactions.
So safe to say you're an expert in the field.
Correct.
I like to hear that. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike. When did you get your start in real estate, and when did you buy your first investment property?
So it's been a little over 13 years that I bought my first investment property. I was 24 years old when I decided to purchase. Now, I was a little uneducated in the investment side of things, didn't know a ton, but knew real estate was the way to go. So I essentially invested passively with an expert. I had a friend that his dad was involved. I don't think a ton of properties, 15, 17 properties at the time. So, just kind of invested with him and learned along the way.
Okay, so you found a mentor, partnered up with him, and there, again, you're partnering up with somebody who knows what they're doing. So with that in mind, now in terms of, let's say, for someone who's looking to get their feet wet in the investing game, what would be some of your recommendations? Should they be looking at new build products, single family residential, duplex? What's kind of some insight that you have there?
Yeah, so I tell everybody who's starting out that it depends on their goal. So for example, if you had a goal to buy 10 investment properties, there's certain lenders you should be using for your first, second, third property. Others that are more opposed to, or like not opposed to lending on your fourth, fifth, and sixth property. So for example, I can't tell you the exact lenders now because I've moved into the commercial space, but I had bought some pre-construction or some newer builds 1-2 years old. Now the appreciation was great on those, right? But the cash flow was negative. So essentially, when I tried to now apply for another mortgage, my mortgage broker was saying, see that property there, you're going to make a lot of money on it, but now you don't qualify for the next property.
Okay, so the cash flow from, let's say, some of these new build properties, it's not going to be there, let's say, out of the get-go, and that's going to have some restriction on your purchasing capacity.
Correct. So that's what I'm saying. If you have a game plan to purchase 10 properties, your first couple of purchases might be slightly different than if you just wanted to buy 1 or 2 and you go out and buy pre-construction. Because qualifying for that fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh property needs to be structured in a way that will allow you to do so. So for example, if you're running negative $500 on one, but it's a pre-construction, or like you just close on that property and you're running 5, 6, that's going to hurt your income. So you may not be able to qualify for that next one. But if you were to buy a property that was now cash flowing $500, $600, $700 a month, that will allow you to potentially get into that next one.
Interesting. Okay, and then just even on that topic alone, like let's say geographic location, like how much is this factoring into decision making for people that are looking to get into their first or second investment property?
So I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience. So I was part of a real estate investment network. Abbreviation was RAIN.
Yep.
And they did their own kind of market analysis on what were the top 10 towns in Canada, in Ontario. And they were based off like economic fundamentals, GDP growth, population growth, what jobs are coming into certain cities. And that's how they would kind of look to say, let's value this city to be a top town. Like Walmart's buying land there, they're typically projecting X amount of years out. Okay. Starbucks, I remember at the time, Starbucks would only go on certain locations where the average income was $90,000 or more. Right? This is bad. I don't know if that's changed now. So some towns outside of the city, like you buy in Toronto, most likely you're running negative. The cap rates are lower. You buy in Barrie, in Aurelia, Hamilton, Brantford, the rents to purchase price are going to be a lot higher.
No, that makes complete sense. So when it comes to, let's say, just even analyzing, a property, obviously there's some fundamentals economically that you have to factor in. So let's say, for example, some people that are looking to driving to their price point, if you will, areas like Thunder Bay, Timmins, like are these on your radar? Is it something that people should be considering?
All those cities that are 8, 10, 12 hours out there, there's opportunity to make money in those cities, but there's also a lot of risk. They're usually driven by one or two industries, right? So you go up north of Sudbury, mining's massive.
Yep.
Right? If mining slows down, what happens to all those rentals? What do vacancy rates look like? So that's where it gets interesting. If you're an expert in that area, you know when to get in, when to get out, there's money to be made. I think there's money to be made in every city, essentially. I don't want to say every city, but most cities. But as a sophisticated real estate investor, I want to invest in something, kind of set it and forget it.
I see.
So I want to be in a top growing town that I know is supported by multiple different, companies coming in there. So like if it's driven by one or two industries, it's risky. You have a lot of industries in there, one drops off, not a big deal, right? So essentially, yeah, I'm looking for a city outside of Toronto, outside of the GTA, that is supported by multiple industries.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let's say using the analogy of someone who's, let's say they're out of school, and they've got a nice entry-level job and a decent down payment, but they don't want to give up on that location of being in the heart of the city. What would your advice be to potentially, let's say, somebody renting in the downtown core, but then taking that surplus of cash that they have of a down payment and buying outside of that GTA in a market like Barrie or Aurelia?
I've actually had clients do that. So they wanted to stay in the downtown core, couldn't afford the downtown core, knew that I was involved in real estate, wanted to get in, asked for my advice. They ended up buying a pre-construction condo in Hamilton, which was low 200s at the time, which they were able to afford, but stayed renting in Toronto, right? So that's an option. A lot of people think they need to be, living in a house that they own. You could live essentially in a rental property, a duplex, a triplex, rent the other units out, or you can just rent that property out in a city you can afford and rent where you want to live.
Okay, that makes complete sense. Now, as far as financing, now I know you're not a mortgage broker, but you've got your fair share of experience in this field. How tricky can it be for, let's say, someone who's looking to purchase their second property and they want this one to be an investment property? Any challenges or hurdles that you can kind of guide us through?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Like as mentioned earlier, like depending on what you're buying first and what cash flow that's bringing in will make it more challenging. But the biggest piece of advice I have is your team, your mortgage broker, your real estate agent, your lawyers, your accountants need to be investment focused, right? A lot of people are using, realtors who just have worked with people buying their own homes, personal residence, right? And they're trying to find a property that works for them or suggesting that, hey, this might work for you. Why not work with a realtor who's been in the investment space for the last 5, 10, 12 years,
Sure.
who has multiple clients? Why not work with a mortgage broker who knows how to structure that second, third, fourth? He may say, hey, this property is great, you're going to make a lot of money, but it may hinder your ability to get that second or third. Have you thought about this? Right? And that was one of the hurdles I had is I bought a property that would have done well, but I was forced to sell it to now qualify for the next one. Looking back, I'm saying, shit, I lost a lot of money on that property. But then I'm saying, would I have bought my third and fourth had I not sold that property? Right? So working with that investment focused broker allowed me to kind of strategize and see what I need to purchase to get that next property.
No, that makes complete sense. And again, you're not an accountant either, but just in terms of, let's say, personal capacity, at which point would you suggest investors start looking at, putting names into a number company or a holding company from that standpoint?
Yeah, that's tricky. I still hold some smaller properties personally, some in a corporation. That you have to speak to your lawyer or your accountant about. I think there's a right time and a certain point to do it, but that's all kind of based off you and your preferences.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Now, just in terms of the market right now, like obviously we've got a little bit of a different temperature in terms of what was happening in 2022. Interest rates obviously are playing a factor. What opportunities are you seeing right now, if any?
Yeah, so now's a very tricky market in my opinion, because you have interest rates, above 5%, but you also have prices that have adjusted for that. So you're seeing a lot of fear in the market right now. People don't want to buy. They're saying rates are too high. I'm going to wait for rates to come down. And I'm sure you hear that as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? The difference is is that when rates come down, prices are going to start to rise again. So here's an example. You buy a property at $600,000, you're paying a 5% interest rate. You're negative $500. If you have an interest rate in a year from now at 4%, but that purchase price isn't 500, it's 600, I can almost guarantee you your cash flow is going to be very similar.
Yeah.
Right? So if you buy it today, for example, and you factor in all your contingencies, all your negative, and have that buffer, in 12, 24 months from now, when that rate comes down, now your cash flow is going to increase. You're also going to get that $100,000 bump on your initial investment.
Yeah, just through appreciation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another thing too, as far as, you know, the constant is going to be your price point. The price point's not going to change. The interest rate is going to, hopefully, fingers crossed, come down, which will change your monthly carrying costs. Okay, so that's good insight there as well. Now, just in terms of strategy for those that, let's say, they're looking to buy something, any recommendations in terms of how long they should hold the property? You know, when should they sell? Any guidance there?
So I'm a fan on holding a minimum of 5 years.
Okay.
At absolute minimum. I know that BRRRR properties, and I'm not sure, you know, if you're familiar with the BRRRR strategy, but buy, renovate, refinance, repeat type of thing going there. People were making a lot of money. It was a good time in the market, so people were able to get in and out very quickly. To me, that's more of a job, a little bit of speculation, unless you're really honed in on what you're doing. And I don't know if I even consider that real estate investing. For me, is you're sitting on some money or have access to money, you're putting it somewhere and it's growing.
Okay.
Very simple, very basic, right? So I like to buy something, factor in a modest appreciation, factor in my mortgage pay down, and factor in some cash flow. And those are the three main ways you make money in real estate. And the reason I say 5 years is because I tell people, if they can, try to purchase 5 rental properties in their lifetime. Because in 5 years, from what I've seen, you're essentially generating close to $100,000. So if you're buying something at, say, $500,000 or $600,000 and you're factoring in a 3% appreciation, $15,000 per year over 5 years, 75 grand. Then you're getting, call it 25,000 or so in mortgage pay down, maybe a little bit in cash flow. Today's environment's a little bit different. But essentially, once you have 5 and you're ready to retire, every year, say you put a 5-year mortgage on all of them, every year you can refi like the next property.
Okay.
Right? So on that 5-year term, say you're retired, you don't have a pension, and you're in and around $100,000 or so, every year you're able to refi that out. Tax-free. It's borrowed capital.
Just basically to summarize in terms of what you just said there. So 5-year plan, 5 properties.
Yeah.
100,000.
Give or take, depending on appreciation, but that's on a modest appreciation. Like the last 10 years, I think we've seen like 7 to 10% appreciation on properties, right? So if you factor that in, someone who was retired just with 5 was probably pulling out 200,000 every year.
Yeah.
Just with 5 like basic single family properties.
Wow. Well, there you have it in terms of the mathematics of it. Now, in terms of what you guys are doing, you know, outside of, let's say, investing in these type of properties, what are you and your partners at Peak Family? What are you guys up to now?
Yeah, so essentially, I started off in residential. There's always a roadblock you're going to hit. Like, the mortgages are never unlimited. You can partner with friends and family. They can qualify for mortgages. But essentially, you get capped out at some point. So 2014, I moved into buying apartment buildings. And those are financed based off of the income that they produce. They're financed as a business. Okay. So for example, you have a Tim Hortons on one side of the street, a Tim Hortons on the other. This one makes 200 grand, this one makes 100 grand, right? The one that's making more, even though they're pretty much side by side, is going to get a higher valuation. Whether it's people grabbing coffees in on the way to work from that side, leaving town, that's going to get a higher valuation because it's bringing in more money. So that's essentially how apartment buildings are valued. And because of that, they're financed based off of the value they bring in, the income they're bringing in, rather than your personal income. So essentially, the more you have, the more the banks are willing to give you, the more experienced you are. Way easier to qualify, right? So over the last year or so, we've developed an apartment fund, which allows us to bring in non-accredited investors through what's called an offering memorandum. It's just a document outlining everything that could happen. If anything happens, here's what happens essentially, right? And we're allowed to take in registered funds from investors. So we could take in $10,000 from you through your RRSP capital, through your TFSA capital.
Interesting. So for those people, let's say hypothetically, again, you know, your average price point here in Orangeville is $800,000. If they're looking to buy, you know, their first investment property, fair to say you need 160K, right?
160K, and most likely a contingency fund to carry the negative cash flow.
Okay, so that's what it would look like on the resale side of things. So now in terms of what you guys are doing, you guys are obviously buying more doors.
Yeah.
But somebody who's looking to get into real estate investing, they're not going to need 160,000 of liquid capital. They can invest with as little as what, 10,000?
10,000. Yeah, and that can be done. Like if here's an example. So if they don't have money in their RRSPs, they can put it into their RRSPs, get a tax return, and then invest. So essentially, maybe it's less than 10,000 because they're going to get that tax break.
Interesting. So similar to how you got your start, you partnered up with somebody who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, you probably had some sweat equity and you know, some skin in the game. So essentially you're offering this to people that are looking to get into the real estate investing space without having any background history on it, and they can partner up with somebody like you who's got a whole wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, and you know what? Even if you do want to be an active investor and you're saving up, like in today's day and age, to save up $160,000 is challenging. It's going to take you years, unless you landed a really great position. To save $160,000 is going to take some time. So if you have a plan to save up a down payment, it's going to take you 5 years. What are you doing with that initial $10,000, $20,000, $30,000? Is it just sitting in the bank losing money? Why not have it invested in a product that you believe in, that's going to also pay out potentially quarterly distributions? Because that's another thing our fund is going to start doing in 2024, is paying out quarterly distributions. So you're getting money back and you're getting an increase in the value. So you're having exposure to an industry prior to you being able to get into it on your own.
Yeah, so you got some skin in the game and you can actually start to see how these things start to work. Yeah. Wow, interesting. So, no, this has been perfect, Mike. Thank you for this. It's a whole lot of information kind of packed into a obviously a video here. But for those guys that have, let's say, a little bit of fear or some remaining, questions that they have, how can we connect everybody and set up a call or something? Is there anything that we can do here to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I mean, my contact will be left in the notes below, so you can reach out. I just want to touch base on my journey when I started. I remember fear was a massive factor. And, in prior conversations we've had, like even calling a mentor, someone I knew that was doing it, it would take me days personally to build up the confidence to give them a call and say, should I be asking them this? How do I say this? Right? So, we're understanding that there is fear, but there's a lot of opportunities out there, right? And when you look back and you're able to hold properties, you're saying, thank God I've done that. So I guess what I'm saying is no question's a dumb question. And, if you have questions or thinking about doing it, don't hesitate to reach out. I was there. It took me days to make that phone call. So yeah, reach out and we're happy to sit down and chat with you guys and strategize, come up with a plan that works for you.
Awesome. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, reach out to myself or Mike. We'd be happy to jump on a call and alleviate any concerns and get you guys into the real estate game. Mike, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.